Yasodanandana Prachachanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 84, Text 61, 62, 63, and 64. So text 61. Shri Vasudeva Uvacha Pratarisha Krita Pasho Namamya Sneha Samjita Tam Dusyayam Ahamanya Shuranam Api Yoginam Shri Vasudeva Uvacha Pratarisha Krita Pasho Nirnamya Sneha Samjita Tam Dustyayam Mahamanye Shuranam Api Yoginam Shri Vasudeva Uvacha Pratarisha Krita Pasho Nirnamya Sneha Samnita Tam Dustyaya Mahamanye Shuranam Api Yoginam. Please chant. Shri Vasudeva Uvacha Pratarisha Krita Pasho Nirnamya Sneha Samnita Tam Dustyaya Mahamanye Shuranam Api Yoginam. Shri Vasudeva Uvacha Pratarisha Krita Pasho Nirnamya Sneha Samjita Tam Dusyayam Mahamanye Shurinam Api Yoginam. And the word for word, Shri Vasudeva Uvacha. Shri Vasudeva said, Brata, O brother, Isha, by the Supreme Lord, Krita, made, Pasha, the noose, Nirnam, of men, Ya, which, Sneha, affection, Samnita, named, Tam, it, Dustyayam, difficult to free oneself from, Aham, I, Manye, think, Shuranam, for hearers, Api, even, Yoginam, and for yogis. And the translation for text 61 by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Shri Vasudeva said, my dear brother, God himself has tied the knot called affection, which tightly binds human beings together. It seems to me that even great heroes and mystics find it very difficult to free themselves from it. Purport. Heroic leaders of men try to transcend their petty attachments by force of will, while introspective yogis pursue knowledge for the same purpose. But the Lord's illusory energy, Maya, is much stronger than any conditioned soul. Only by taking shelter of Krishna, the Lord of Maya, can one become immune to her influence. Text 62. asmasva prachikatpeyam yat kritagneshu satamai maitri arpita phalachapi na nivarteta karnichit. And the translation for text 62. Indeed, the Supreme Lord must have created the bonds of affection, for such exalted saints as you have never stopped showing matchless friendship towards us ingrates, although it has never been properly reciprocated. This is all Vasudev addressing Nanda Maharaj. Text 63. Prag akalpak chakushalam britarvo nacharamahi aduna Shri Mahananda Aksha na pasyama purasata. The translation for text 63. Previously, dear brother, we did nothing to benefit you because we were unable to. Yet even now that you are present before us, our eyes are so blinded by the intoxication of material good fortune that we continue to ignore you. Purport. While living under the tyranny of Kamsa, Vasudeva was unable to do anything to help Nanda and his subjects defend themselves against the many demons sent from Mathura to kill Krishna and Balaram. Text 64. Maharaja Shrir Abhut Pumsa Shreyas Kamasya Manada Svagyanam Utabandunva Napasyati Yayandadrik. In the translation for text 64. O most respectable one, may a person who wants the highest benefit in life never gain kingly opulence, for it leaves him blind to the needs of his own family and friends. And the purport to text 64. It is, of course, out of his deep humility that Vasudeva is berating himself, but his condemnation of opulence is in general valid. Earlier in this canto, Narada Muni delivered a stinging criticism of Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, two wealthy sons of Kuvera, the treasurer of heaven. Intoxicated by both pride and liquor, the two had failed to offer proper respects to Narada when he happened upon them as they sported naked in the Mandakini river with some young woman. Seeing them in their shameful condition, Narada said, Nahi anyo yusato yosyan Buddhi Brahm Sorajo Punam Srimadad Abhijajadir Yatra Strir Jutam Ashavam. Translation. Among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family, and being learned. When one is uneducated but falsely puffed up by wealth, the result is that one engages his wealth in enjoying wine, woman, and gambling. And that's from Bhagavatam 10.10.8. Sorry, there was a little inclusion of something else. I don't know where it came from. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhibhyevacha Patitanam Padnebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Roma Padaswami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in reading these verses, I found myself looking at Srila Raghunath Das Goswami addressing his mind. And this is from Manaha Shiksha. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami addresses his mind in this way. And this is the first text. Oh, dear brother, my mind, having given up all pride, please develop unprecedented and excessive attachment to Shri Guru, to Shri Vrindavan, the abode of cows, to the devotee residents of Vrindavan, to all the devotees on this planet, to the confidential mantra given by Shri Guru, to the holy names of Shri Shri Radha Krishna, and to the process of surrendering to the fresh youthful couple of Vraja. Holding your feet, I beseech you with sweet words. So this is Srila Raghunath Das Goswami addressing his mind. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who does a commentary in Manasa Shiksha on these verses, there are 12 of them. I've read the first one because I think it's of great relevance to what we're going to discuss today. He notes that the wealth and the life of every Gaudiya Vaishnava is assisted by looking at what Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is doing by addressing his own mind. And by his doing so, is teaching everyone these same secrets. So this is, just knowing these secrets can actually give one the wealth of life that one needs as a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So Sri Raghunath Das Goswami was taught by Svarup Damodar under the instruction of Lord Chaitanya in revealing. So just by reading how he's addressing his mind, it reveals what one should or should not do after one has accumulated the good fortune from gaining faith in devotional service to Lord Krishna. So we're going to expand on that a little bit. So the residents of Vraja, because, his comment was that, or he's addressing his mind, indicating what one should be doing is freeing oneself. So after one freed oneself from pride, then you're supposed to develop attachment to the residents of Vraja. So the residents of Vraja, it refers to those who reside in Vrajadam for the purpose of pleasing the Lord through devotional service. Because, one can be living in a place but not have that purpose. So it's specifically those who have that purpose of pleasing the Lord through devotional service. So they're called Vrajavasigana, which indicates, and it's also a particular category who you want to please. They are the pure devotees or elevated Uttama Bhagavatas. And such persons, they reside in Vrajadam, and it may be physically or in meditation. So you don't literally have to just look at the residents that fall into that category, the Uttama Bhagavatas that are residing in Vrindavan, but those that are also residing there through meditation. So this is of interest in the current reading because there is Vasudev addressing one such resident of Vrindavan, Nanda Maharaj. So he falls into that category. So the request to his mind on the part of Raghunath Das Goswami is following on the mind having given up pride, because that's a prerequisite. After the mind gives up pride, then you have to focus in a particular way. So that pride takes different forms because we want to know what's necessary to give up. So this is the different kinds of pride that are there. And I always smile because I recall Chandra Prabhu giving a class, and he was so delighted by the fact that pride is called damba. So it's an interesting word. I just remember him because he was so delighted by the word. So different forms of damba or pride. First, one has to give up maya, so illusion and trickery. Then avidya, some ignorance, because these are different kinds of pride. Pride may take the form of ignorance. You know, you're so proud, but you're actually being ignorant. Or you're so proud, but actually you're already under the influence of maya. So these are different kinds of pride. There can be cheating. So pride that comes from cheating. You actually are practicing some sort of cheating, but you're proud about it. There may be, that's called kapatata, cheating, a nice word. Then there's the other form of pride that there's a lack of direct simplicity. So you can see pride sometimes when persons can't be straightforward or directly simple. So then it indicates there's pride there. And sathya, which is deceit and duplicity. So being deceptive, you know, one presents a certain front, but actually there's something else going on. So, you know, deceit and duplicity. So these are the ways you can understand that pride is present through these different ways. So the reason it is of relevance to give up these different ways that pride manifests means that one's giving up a motive other than the progressive cultivation of devotional service, because you have to be motivated, you have to put a lot of energy into those particular, if you're going to cheat, you have to think a lot and really focus on it. Or if you actually going to be ignorant, you know, you have to build your reality through that ignorance. So there's a lot of energy that has to go into it. So the reason you have to give it up is that all that energy is being taken up that way instead of trying to cultivate devotional service, because you have to use energy to cultivate devotional service. You have to move your mind in a different direction, just like Raghunath Das Goswami is illustrating. So the mind can hold on to pride, that one is engaged in a kind of cheating or duplicity, even when there's like philosophical speculation. So persons may actually do their cheating through, you know, studying scriptures, but speculating about them. And that's usually called jnana. So you're getting some knowledge, but it's in a cheating way. Or you can be doing good works, but that could also fall into the category of cheating because it's for your own material enjoyment. So, you know, one comes across persons who perhaps may want to give a donation, but they also need it to be put on a plaque. They want the world to see. So that's part of, you know, it's for your material enjoyment. So it means that say one is proceeding with devotional service or trying to, then you're going to actually see that that kind of ignorance is more powerful than bhakti, because you are you're putting your energy in that sort of cheating, into that cheating or that ignorance kind of functioning. Then it's going to be giving you pleasure, and you're going to think that that's more important than bhakti, or superior to bhakti, or more powerful than bhakti. So that's why it's necessary to, pay attention and shift the mind. Give up that pride of being able to function in that way, or give up that pride of your, being egotistical and wanting acclaim for your good works. It requires a lot of thoughtfulness. So Vasudev addresses Nanda Maharaj. These are the verses today. He's friend and he's a resident of Vrindavan. And he shows just how he's addressing Nanda Maharaj, shows that there's a certain philosophical detachment, because he's analyzing. So that's what's necessary. When you're practicing bhakti, you're taking a step back and you're analyzing your actions. You're analyzing how your mind is functioning. So the paraphrasing of his statement to Nanda is the following. So notice that philosophical detachment. He's observing something. This is what he says. I think these bonds of affection are hard to cut. By warriors, by their strength, and for yogis, by their knowledge. So he's noticing something. He's noticing that when there's affection, it's very difficult to cut affection. I mean, that's a question if you want to cut it, but if it's something that may be interfering with your bhakti, so he's saying a warrior would find it difficult to even physically cut that bond of affection, and even yogis, through their knowledge, they understand that something may be lesser, but it may be difficult to cut a bond of affection. So Srila Vishwanath gives an understanding of the bonds of affection held by Nanda and Yasoda. So he includes Yasoda. This is what Srila Vishwanath paraphrases what Vasudeva is communicating to Nanda. So this is how he puts it. Throughout the day and night, the two of you are tightly bound by the rope of affection for my sons. So Srila Vishwanath is analyzing it, that the bond of affection, isn't just that bond of affection between friends, so Vasudeva and Nanda himself, but also between Nanda and Yasoda and Krishna and Balaram. So he's saying that actually there's such a tight bond of affection there between them, like really tight. So these ropes of affection that Vasudeva sees in Nanda and Yasoda is that of Uttama Bhagavatas. So actually, they're residents of Vrindavan. They're actually highly elevated residents of Vrindavan. I mean, they have a very tight bond of affection for Krishna and Balaram. So the love inherent in the soul, which is pure love for the Lord, it's called Atmarati. In pure Krishna Bhakti, it's the original, deeply emotional attachment that remains fixed and visible at all times. So it's a very different kind of attachment. It's visible, it's fixed, it's always there. And it's deeply emotional, deeply emotional. So the reason it takes this form, that it's so deeply emotional, it's so fixed, it's always there, is because, and this is the reason that's given, this pure love takes that form because Krishna is the soul of all souls. So he's the epitome of that kind of spiritual love. So having that connection with him allows for that bond with him to be in that way, very fixed, always visible, constantly there, deeply emotional. So this is, of course, for the devotees that are very advanced in their devotional life. the Uttama Bhagavatas. And those are the ones that if one is trying to actually aspire on the path of bhakti, those are the ones that one needs to become attached to. So, and there's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because we're looking at this statement of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, addressing his mind of, what needs to go and what needs to be cultivated. He contrasts the pure love with what's present in a conditioned soul. So in a conditioned soul, the love comes in contact with dull matter. It's just dull, or maya, and it gets transformed into material attachment. So that's the difference. It's just like getting attached to something that isn't conscious, fully conscious. Or nothing can be fully conscious unless it's in direct conscious relation with Lord Krishna. So that's what the love is when it comes into contact in a conditioned soul. It just becomes material attachment. So that's the interesting distinction that's there. So even if Vasudeva is talking to Nanda about this bond that's difficult to cut, we know what kind of bond Nanda has and Yasoda have. It's that deeply emotional bond to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balaram. So direct simplicity, because that was something that needs to be cultivated. So direct simplicity is shown by Vasudeva, because this is how he continues when he's talking. My dear brother, and I took this from Srila Prabhupada's putting what were words used by Vasudeva. So he's addressing Nanda. My dear brother, you have exhibited feelings of love for me that I was not able to return. I think, therefore, that I'm ungrateful. You have behaved exactly as is characteristic of saintly persons, but I shall never be able to repay you. I have no means to repay you for your friendly dealings. Nevertheless, I'm confident that our tie of love will never break. So this is, you see the kind of direct simplicity that's there in Vasudeva, because that was something that one is trying to direct one's mind when one's practicing bhakti. You want to cultivate that direct simplicity, because that's absent if one's in a proud condition. But see how it's so present in Vasudeva. He's able to say this to Nanda. I'm never going to be able to repay you for the love you've shown me. I've got no way to repay you for the friendly dealings you've shown me. So that's that direct simplicity that he obviously possesses, that he's able to express this very comfortably to Nanda Maharaj. So if one looks at addressing one's own mind, and this is Srila Raghunath Das Goswami from Manhaj Shiksha, the verse that I was reading to you, it's important that one has already achieved faith on the path of loving devotion to Lord Krishna. So faith has to be there if one wants to start looking at giving up pride, because that's the biggest obstacle, that pride factor. So the faith comes from the potency of association with saintly persons. That's how faith develops. There's potency in saintly persons. So if one's coming into contact with saintly persons, then the faith in devotional life increases. So that's usually referred to as sadhu sangha. And it manifests within the heart. So faith happens in the heart, where one starts to have this faith in bhakti. And in a sense, Vasudeva is acknowledging the potency of the association of a saintly person, because he tells Nanda, you have behaved exactly as is characteristic of saintly persons. So he's acknowledging the potency of the association of a saintly person. He had that with Nanda Maharaj. It's a conversation between Vasudeva and Nanda. So Srila Vishwanath, he gives a paraphrase of Vasudev's statement. So I read to you how Srila Prabhupada put it, and here's Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur saying what were the words of Vasudev to Nanda Maharaj. So this was from text 62. This friendship, which has been offered by such exalted saints as you, by bestowing the great treasure of firm affection for Rama and Krishna, is incomparable and will certainly never cease. Notice. So he understands and he's expressing it, showing that direct simplicity. He's able to express it in words. So he's acknowledging the particular good fortune of saintly association enhancing his faith, and he's able to analyze the kind of association that Nanda Maharaj has offered him, which is a kind of very wonderful friendship. And it's through that friendship that he himself got this treasure of affection for Balaram and Krishna. That's what Vasudeva is saying. It's quite extraordinary. And he's saying that this treasure of affection for Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram is incomparable. It doesn't compare to, and I was early on describing, if you have material affection, it's just for something dull and it's just attachment. It doesn't have this depth. And he highlights another characteristic. He says it will never cease. So it never ends if you develop that kind of affection for Krishna and Balaram. So in instructing one's mind, as Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is doing from Manasa Shiksha, one should respect gurus as saints. So this is another thing. So how to move away from pride, because that's naturally there, is one instructs one's mind. So one speaks to one's mind. You have to respect the guru as a saintly personality. And you have to use rational intelligence to do so. So you may analyze, for instance, I sometimes think of my spiritual master and I think, what an extraordinary thing. Every 3 days, he's traveling to a new city, a new town, and he's continuously just speaking on the scriptures. So clearly a saintly person. So that's rational intelligence. You analyze the actions and you can understand that's the activity that saintly person is engaged in. So you speak to the mind because you're helping the mind to respect the guru and saintly persons, because generally the mind is accustomed to doing an analysis and dismissing or criticizing a little bit. So one has to actually cultivate that kind of respect for saintly persons. And one should deal with one's guru. So this is all connected to Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, looking at how you actually move the mind away from pride. One should deal with one's guru as a well-wishing friend. So generally, one finds that there's a sense of some reverence towards one's guru, but one can also see one's guru as a well-wishing friend, always wanting the very best for one, always trying to make some arrangement that would help one to move forward in one's development of this spiritual attachment to Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. So this is now Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, because he comments in Manasa Shiksha on Raghunath Das Goswami speaking to his mind. So he says, once Shraddha develops, so once you have faith, which has come because of having some association of saintly persons, one should take in and accept the shelter of an initiating spiritual master. So that's what somebody is obliged to do once they've started to develop faith. As well as one should take the Diksha mantra for being able to worship Radha and Krishna. So you don't just take it, you accept it. It has to be accepted. One should respect and serve 3 types of Vaishnavas. So this is all with regard to, moving the mind away from pride and material attachment. One should respect and serve 3 types of Vaishnavas. So it's not that you dismiss one category or only look at one category. Because early on I was talking about, developing respect for the Guru. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is saying you have to develop attachment to the residents of Vrajadam. So I identified those with those that even in meditation, they're not residing in Vrajadam, but in meditation, they're there. So the very elevated devotees. But one should respect and serve 3 types of Vaishnavas: the junior, the intermediate, and the advanced. It has to be done in all categories. According to their particular eligibility, you do it with love and in a friendly manner. It has to be done that way. So if a devotee barks at another devotee, that's not a friendly manner. So it's not helping the pride leave the mind. So one really has to be very conscious of the manner in which they're dealing with other devotees. So one should also develop, these are all the shoulds, because that's what Raghunath Das Goswami's Manasa Shiksha is helping one to understand how to move the mind away from pride. One should also develop deep attachment for chanting the mantra, like deep attachment, and serving the holy name. So, very respectfully chant, understand you're serving the holy name. So, here's Srila Vishwanath speaking of how Vasudev deals with himself. So I'm making this connection with Srila Raghunath Das Goswami addressing his mind. This is what Vasudev says to Nanda. So it's something of how he's dealing with his own mind. He says, "Who are we?" referring to himself. "We are ungrateful, not acknowledging the help you rendered to us. Hence, how can we who are so wicked be so shameless to even speak to this to you who are most saintly?" So he's obviously also addressing his own mind. He's saying that Nanda Maharaj is such a saintly person. He gave so much help because, after all, he was the person who reared Krishna and Balaram. So he's saying, how can we be so wicked to even talk to you about anything, because we are so wicked and so shameless. So we're going to find out why he sees himself that way or sees his mind that way. And Vasudev explains this. He says that he failed to show gratitude. That's how he sees himself. And Srila Vishwanath, he puts it this way, that these are the words of Vasudev, or his inner thought. "Previously, because of being imprisoned by Kamsa, I did nothing to help you." Because remember, Vasudev and Devaki were imprisoned by Kamsa. And there's Krishna, his child, is being reared by Nanda and Yasoda. So he says, "Previously, because of being imprisoned by Kamsa, I did nothing to help you. Now, even though Kamsa has been killed and I'm free still, due to the intoxication of wealth, I continue to ignore you." So this is what he's seeing. He's seen himself as being intoxicated by wealth. I mean, we just heard that he performed the most magnificent sacrifice and, was ornamenting with precious ornaments the brahmanas. He was even surrendering his own clothing to the reciters in the sacrifice. The attending persons from 3 different or 4 different kingdoms all received all kinds of valuable gifts. The brahmanas even were given marriageable young girls. I mean, everything was taken care of beautifully. So he's seen himself that he's been intoxicated with his wealth. That's how he's seen himself. So he's saying because of that intoxication, he can't even see Nanda Maharaj properly as a saintly person. So this is why he's berating himself. So in some sense, it's like addressing the mind. So that was from text 63. So it brings to mind Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because he comments on Manasa Shiksha, and he says it this way. So it's in some way it's reiterating Raghunath Das Goswami's statement of addressing the mind. O mind, desire to serve the young couple of Raja with uncommon, wonderful attachment. Gurudev, the forest of Raja, the residence of Raja, the pure devotees, and the Brahmanas. Your mantra and the holy name. So this is addressing the mind. You tell the mind, develop this uncommon attachment for Radha and Krishna. Have a desire to serve the Brahmanas. Have a desire to serve the holy name. So address the mind. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur puts it simply that way. Of course, in the case of Vasudev, he has already demonstrated this acceptance of Gurudev or worship of Gurudev, because it was mentioned that he actually took initiation at the time of performing his great sacrifice. And there was mention of his service to the Brahmanas. I'm going to read what he did for the Brahmanas. Vasudev received initiation along with his wives, who wore silk saris and were adorned with bangles, necklaces, ankle bells, and earrings. With his body wrapped in deerskin, Vasudev shone splendidly. So that's mention of his initiation. And then there's mention of how he dealt with the Brahmanas. Then at the appropriate time, and according to scripture, Vasudev enumerated the priests by decorating them with precious ornaments, though they were already richly adorned, and offering them valuable gifts of cows, land, and marriageable girls. So everything was being given to the Brahmanas. So he's certainly demonstrating this wonderful attachment to the Brahmanas. He's demonstrating it just by virtue that he's giving so much wealth to the Brahmanas. Now, to this resident of Vraja, Vasudev became, so meaning to Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev, and this was the term that was used, he became submerged in humility. So that was his mood towards Nanda Maharaj, full of humility. And Srila Vishwanath said that Nanda Maharaj was also submerged in an ocean of humility. So Nanda Maharaj hearing and Vasudev speaking, both of them were in a state of complete humility. So there's no space for pride in that kind of arrangement. So the conclusion for Vasudev is that a person should not obtain wealth and kingdom. This is what he decides, because it blinds one to the saintliness of another person, because one is so enamored with wealth. So it keeps one in that pride area. So Srila Prabhupada puts across Vasudev's words this way. So this is Srila Prabhupada saying this is how Vasudev spoke. At the present moment, I'm very opulent because of my material property. I have become blind. I therefore cannot satisfy you properly even at this time. My dear brother, so he's talking to Nanda, you are so nice and gentle that you offer all respects to others, but don't care for any respect for yourself. A person seeking auspicious progress in life must avoid possessing too much opulence. So this is Nanda Maharaj, Vasudev, as he's seen and speaking to Nanda Maharaj, so that he will not become blind and puffed up, and he should take care of his friends and relatives. Of course, this particular instruction that is to one's mind is to take full shelter of the devotional path and to be enthusiastically encouraged to progress. So You take full shelter of the devotional path and you become enthusiastic to progress. So one's thinking should not be. So this is from Manasa Shiksha, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, so this is how one should not be thinking. If I'm lucky, I will get spiritual success. Or if it is not in my fortune, then I may not achieve it. So you shouldn't be thinking like that. It is the mercy of Guru and Krishna combined. And the reason one shouldn't be thinking like that, it's the mercy of Guru and Krishna combined with one's own endeavor that gets spiritual potency. So you're trying, but you're also getting so much mercy showered on you. So as that spiritual potency manifests, because one experiences it, one's desire to enjoy the fruits of one's action will diminish. It automatically happens. So with increased spiritual potency, as you try and really enthusiastically pursuing devotional life, and mercy is coming from Krishna and one's spiritual master, then automatically spiritual potency builds up. And at the same time, that desire to enjoy the fruit of one's work or actions, it will diminish. It just works like that. So those were thoughts on these 4 verses. Please feel free to expand the discussion in any way.
Thank you for your class.
You're
so
thinking.
Extremely clear. I was wondering, when is it that living in the temple can be a detriment to one's spiritual life?
Okay. That's an interesting question, because living in a temple means that one has access to sadhusanga. So it means you have access to association with saintly persons, put it in commas, inverted commas. And the reason one puts it in inverted commas is because everyone has the same struggle. So, I mean, what emerged from this conversation with Vasudev and Nanda Maharaj that had me thinking was this great progress that one can make in one's spiritual life through having saintly association. Your faith increases. So that is the positive. The faith increases. Now, where a problem comes in, and that was the highlight of the class, is that every single person, though they have on the path of bhakti, in the mind is a whole chunk of pride. We all have it, because we are conditioned souls. So it means that we already learn certain patterns of liking something and getting attached to something. So that's already there. And in an environment where you're surrounded by persons on the path of bhakti, but also cultivating bhakti, but carrying pride, it requires the recognition on the part of each and every individual in that environment to actually address their mind. So where there's some detriment, and it's not specific to the environment, although the environment, it may rear its head in a much more graphic way, is that someone or some persons may not be choosing to address their mind and to actually look at where that pride lies. So we heard what were those categories of pride. It might be practicing some duplicities and not being straightforward about something. It might be that there's even some cheating that goes on. One presents things one way, but something else is happening, or one's not straightforward. If someone one person or several persons in the environment are not addressing their mind but are actually going with pride, it can cause great disruption in their own devotional life, because they're neglecting to make the choice to move in the direction of bhakti. Then they're making a choice to go with the pride. It can actually, it'll have consequences for them individually. So that's where the detriment lies, because of making a wrong choice, not being very vigilant with the mind. Or through the actions, it actually causes distress to others or offense to others. And so if the persons on the receiving end are offended, distressed, it's going to actually accelerate for the persons performing the actions from the space of pride their particular crisis in devotional life. So that's painting the picture of, in the context of what we're discussing, how it can play itself out. Of course, for the persons that are distressed, offended, etc., may require guidance from one's well-wishing friend, one's spiritual master, of how to actually manage for oneself, hurt or distress or offense. Yeah, and then in which case, that person is protected. The other person, however, if continuing on the prideful path with all the different categories that are there for how pride takes its shape, the cheating, being illusioned, their dealings are not proper, that's where the detriment comes in. They will accelerate some moment of crisis in their devotional life. Some moment of crisis. Yeah. And for some people, that crisis can be very public, like literally having to leave the environment because they've just caused a whole stream of practitioners of bhakti to be offended, hurt, distressed. So their exit may be very public. In other cases, maybe it's private. The person just loses taste. Yeah, or loses friendships. That's the other one. Yeah. So thank you for your question. It's very relevant. Thanks, Vaishnav 700, for doing your service. Asking a question is good, even if one is not clear on something, because it helps to clarify the thinking. But thank you. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.